This episode of the Worship Together podcast is presented by Planning Center. Planning Center Services is the all-in-one way to manage your church service.
What a wonderful name it is. Nothing compares to this. What a wonderful name it is. The name of Jesus.
I'm your host, Jimmy Williams. This week I sat down with Brooke Ligertwood.
But then when I was 15, I met Christ. It all kind of made sense and it all kind of came together. And I remember, I think probably one of the seeds that was planted in my kind of young little spirit was my uncle telling me, one day my uncle was a Christian and he told me about a guy called Rich Mullins who had written a song where he talked about a story in the Bible where God had brought Abraham out of his tent and shown him the stars in the sky and said, "So shall your offspring be." And I was so captivated by that story and by the idea that someone could write a song about that. So even before I was a Christian, that those seeds were kind of being planted. Then I met Jesus, as I said. That was almost an isolated process. It kind of happened alone in my bedroom. And then after a few months, I was like, oh my gosh, I think I'm a Christian. I should start going to church. So my mum would drop me off and pick me up from the little Salvation Army near our house. And I would go and, go to church by myself as like a little 15-year-old standing in the back. And but the God is God and amazing and very good at what he does and really authors our transformation. And so I remember feeling one day like the Lord said to me that I should go and ask Raywin, who was one of the elders at our church, the Salvation Army, if I could go to her house once a week after school and have a cup of tea and just ask her about Jesus and ask her about the Bible and the things of God. And I had never heard the term discipleship or anything like that, but that's what it was. And so I was like, Raywin, can I please come to your house? I've always had no problem saying what I think or what I want. So I was like, Raywin, can I please come to your house every week? So I would go to Raywin's house every Friday after school and she would make a cup of tea and we'd go sit in her basement and she would teach me about the things of God and about Jesus, and we would pray together and
this was in New Zealand.
This was in New Zealand.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then, so that was kind of my last few years of high school that was taking place, that I met the Lord, and my life was really transformed and all these foundations of faith were taking place. And then I, literally right after finishing high school, was signed to Sony Music as a mainstream artist. And that's a whole other story about that, how that happened again, God really authoring every aspect of that. And then things happened very quickly. I was signed when I was 18. I was 19 when the record came out and really it exploded almost overnight in New Zealand.
I didn't realize you were that young.
Yeah, really young,
Man.
really young. And so I think off that first album, there was 5 number 1 radio singles in a tiny country, so it's almost like it really is a fishbowl. So things got really big really fast, and I was a kid, trying to navigate all of this stuff and what I had felt the Lord had called me to, and was really certain about that. And then an unexpected thing happened, and I was getting ready to release the record in Australia. So I was going over to Australia to do a showcase for the label over there, and one of the session guys that I had brought in to play with me in my band went to Hillsong in Sydney. And so the day that we were landing in, one of them went to Hillsong and another of them was friends with people at Hillsong. The day we were landing in Sydney to go and do this showcase for the label, one of them said, "Hey, my friends, out at Hills are having a barbecue. Do you want to come?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's go for it. Let's go." And so I went out to this barbecue in the Hills district of Sydney, my first day in Sydney, and I met all the people who were to become my best friends in the world, including my husband. And I was like, these are my people. Like I felt like I had the strangest tangible feeling of feeling like I had come home. And so literally 6 weeks later, my stuff was in a shipping container and I was on my way moving to Sydney and became part of our church. And so just, I I think it was around the time of Colour Conference. Colour Conference is our women's conference, happens every March. And so I just volunteered writing messages. I was on the team that wrote like lovely affirming messages in lipstick on the mirrors, you know, when churches went through a phase of that for women's things, write lovely things in lipstick on mirrors. So I was on that team that did that and then like cleaned them off and just kind of, fell in love with our church. And then it was probably about 9 months. I'm not sure of the exact timing, but within a certain period of time, Darlene had tricked me into leading worship, which was never on my radar.
Had you ever led worship up to that point?
Not that I can remember, I don't think.
That's a pretty big platform for the first time.
So, it was just like at team nights or things like that. But I remember the first time I ever led at our church, and honestly, it was quite a conflicted experience because up until then, whenever I was on stage with a microphone in my hand, it was in a Brooke Fraser context with the intention of, ministering to and drawing people that might never walk into the four walls of a church. But of course, worship was the foundation of everything, but it had never been something that had been exposed to the public eye. So it was a really strange sensation for me.
You can listen to this full interview and all of our Worship Together podcast episodes on Apple Podcast and everywhere podcasts are found.